I hear you. I hear you, CJ. There's nothing wrong with being out in the community campaigning. I've done
That's
that
right.
many a time myself.
Yes, sir. So, while we're waiting on her, there is an issue that people are talking about on the next door that if you may want to go over about the reducing the budget 4% each year, or however it's stated on your platform there.
I
Give us a
saw
little
somebody
insight
ask
on that.
about that a little while ago, and I responded to them about that. So, CJ, what exactly are they concerned about? What upsets them, and do
Um,
they like it, not like it, or don't understand how you reduce a budget?
I think it's they don't understand how they're reducing it, and they're thinking about that the school budget will be left with nothing. I think that's
How
their concern.
the school budget will be left with nothing, reducing it by 5% when it's a $222 million budget. That's
Mm-hmm.
hardly nothing, right? So
All
this
right.
is what you do. There's always fat
Hi,
and
Oh, hey, how are you?
good. Is
Yes,
Larry
ma'am.
really there?
I'm
Hi.
here
He
and I'm
is.
talking actually right now. Like CJ
Uh,
asked me a question. So
No, you're
okay.
good. Go ahead.
So 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 when we're looking at the 5%, this is what we looked at. And I've talked about this many a times on my show and in other places. So
Mm-hmm.
there's always fat in a budget, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. There's usually up to 10% waste, whether you want to admit it or not. So, and I've recommended a modest 5% reduction a year in fat. So, one of the things I think we could look at easily and reduce some of the fat is the central office, which is bloated with staff they don't need. So, we look at that. We look at programs that they're paying for that they're not using. We look at all the vehicles that they have in their fleet program over there in their fleet program that everyone doesn't need a vehicle. Those are millions of dollars worth of vehicles and upkeep on that. So
Right.
there is easily several ways we can cut them 5% a year when we really look at it. Then you look at programs that you don't need that they've stopped using and they're still paying for, personnel that you don't really need that are you've got duplicate positions. So I mean, no one needs to be concerned about that. And then also I talked about maybe the need for I'm not certain what they're doing with grants. I don't hear a lot about grants. I would like to actually have two effective grant writers working at the Board of Education, capitalizing on all the federal and state grant monies that are out there that I don't think that the this Board of Education is actually taking an advantage of it. I've seen Janice shake her head at that. So I know she was agreeing with me with that. So, I mean, just, looking from the outside in, I see a lot of different ways we could get different revenue streams to cover some of the things we're doing. One of the things I know they didn't do is they didn't get all the parents to fill out the documents on their free lunch and reduced lunch program. So they lost funding there because they didn't get the documents filled out from the parents and they didn't get the funding that they could have there. I mean, you have a couple people designated to do that. You have the PTA organization help with getting those organizations. Every kid's got a laptop or a desktop. I mean, or a tablet. Load that document to your child's device. Have that go home with them, and their parents be able to fill that out as a downloadable document on that piece of hardware that we send home with them. CJ, there are many ways that we can do it. Thinking out of the box, being proactive. And that's the thing that I don't see this board currently doing, thinking out of the box, being proactive. So, yeah, anybody that's concerned about that, don't be. You got a $222 million budget, and I'm talking about cutting 5% of waste. That's no problem.
All right. And there was, while I was talking to Nicole, she was talking about getting her kids registered for school and how big of a headache that was. And like, it would take months down the road. And now we're having these new people coming in. So how would that affect, when you get better registration for the kids? So it'd be
well, CJ, I mean, what new kids are coming in? I mean, those houses are still empty, and I don't know what they're talking about. There are no new kids coming in. The enrollment has went down the last several years. We're 2,000 students down from COVID. So, and I don't see that number going back up. And I can attest to the horrible enrollment process. My daughter's children, when they came originally from Newton to Rockdale, and she started when they were still in the Newton County schools when before that school year ended, she knew she was moving. And they still started late in Rockdale because Rockdale had not completed their enrollment over the summer. So we were talking about 3 months, and those kids, my grandkids, still started school 2 weeks late because they weren't enrolled. We definitely need to look. Yeah, Janice, that's reality.
Go ahead.
And that does surprise me. But as a school, we collaborate with them, especially for students within the Georgia Pre-K program. We host a lot of the Georgia Pre-K programs at Peachtree. So part of our transition is that we do work with parents to make sure that they're registering the kids now. You can imagine the chaos that ensues when people wait to the last minute. And honestly, people don't know and think about the importance of keeping up with a birth certificate, social security card, proof of residency, because even when we register for Georgia Pre-K, there's like 6 different documents we need. And it is a little bit of a challenge to get those documents in order. So, I also think that when people move a lot, that it becomes even more problematic to go back to where you moved from and get those documents. So that complexity is challenging. It's the first time really a lot of parents have had to do that. So there is some challenge there, but I do know that they have parent liaisons once you're in the school and things like that designed to help with a myriad of things, but lots of challenges.
Yeah, it can be. And my daughter had all of that stuff ahead of time, Janice, and he actually had her lease agreement already in advance, and she had all those documents, and it just did not flow smoothly. And the school blamed the board, and the board. That was when my daughter first came to Rockdale years ago. My daughter moved to actually up next to Oconee. She actually is in Jackson County, right?
Okay.
Janice, that was a very smooth transition. No problems. It went fluid. I mean, it is night and day difference in the school system there. And then my grandkids, there are a few issues that we have with some traumatic incidents that occurred, and just the support that she's got there versus the lack of support. And I'm speaking firsthand from a grandparent of children who had needs that did not receive quality treatment at Rockdale County school system. And they can say, well, Larry, you're running for office, all this nonsense they want. But that's reality. I'm actually one of many people who in Rockdale County experience the inadequacies of this system, and knows that somebody like me who might shake a few trees or bushes needs to be in that school board that will not mind getting in trouble themselves to make sure that you get your services you need.
Right.
Well, as I've mentioned to a couple of the board members, I think it would be so great for them to be able to have that conversation, like a parent forum, so they could ask direct questions. The challenge is, I mean, even when I was going to come to the board meeting the other night, Larry, I was like, oh, it must be at a later time because there were so few cars in the parking lot. And I was like, well, I'll just come back later. So I was surprised the poor attendance, but then again, it is the summertime. So, that creates its own challenges when we can't get people to meetings. So they need to, keep working on how you do outreach, because I know even at the meeting down at Honey Creek Elementary that we went to for the zoning hearing, there was a great turnout. And I always think of Honey Creek Elementary as a school with great parent engagement and things like that. But I don't know how often the board members actually get to meet with the families directly as a group and have a format like that.
Well, I intend to have my community meetings, and they're going to be listening meetings, because I am very much aware that if I'm elected, I will not be speaking for the board, because that's actually state law. But state law does allow me as a board member to actually have meetings and have discussions with people about policies that the board has passed in open, and discussions the board has had. So, I mean, I won't be telling them that the board is going to do anything or I'm going to do anything. It's going to be more of a listening session. And then also these sessions are going to be streamed also, because I have a facility that has agreed to let me, a church that's agreed to let me have the meetings there, and they have streaming capacity. So I will be streaming those meetings also. And I will be inviting up to 2 members to come to those meetings with me, and I'll rotate them, because only 3 of us will be allowed to come to the meeting at a time, because we'll to make sure we're in compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
Correct. Okay, good.
So, Janice, we had a lot of fireball happen this past week with the chairman. Would you like to respond a little bit to that? And since I don't know if you had to since then, so if you have any thoughts on what happened at the meeting there and how he responded to the citizens.
Yeah, so I mean, I was really surprised. I've met Nicole and talked to her and communicated on a couple different occasions, and she is so bright and really, I think, has a lot of good ideas. But as any homeowner would feel, she's extremely frustrated, and so I think the level of disrespect, not only to her, but just the way that he called the staff up, left me a little unsettled as well.
Yeah, well, I didn't get the point of that. If anybody did, please explain.
Yeah, just the way that he did that just was not good. And, you know, I've heard from so many people that were appalled that he would conduct himself that way. But I think that we've seen that not just on that day, but we've seen it before. We've seen it to Corliss Turner, George Kellichek. We've seen it, if you watch the Larry Cox. But that is not the decorum that I expect. I think meetings should have a level of opportunity, of course, for citizens to speak. My goal is really to have open dialogue with people for up to 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, and they can address anything on the agenda. Of course, I expect them to, conduct themselves with a level of, kindness and things like that, because really we're all in this together, and I want to make sure that we find resolution with problems. Sometimes there are no resolutions, and those are the hardest situations. But when I was on the county commission for 8 years, I think we did a great job of trying to find solutions, resolve issues with people in the community. Probably the hardest thing one of the hardest things was stormwater, and when that legislation came down to counties, we were really left trying to define what that looked like and how to resolve a lot of the issues. But that issue is going to be even more complicated with all the construction that we're having, and it will leave possibly other people in the same situation. Nicole and all of her friends who are residents in Mountain Valley Estates are experiencing right now. And when you see and hear the stories from the different residents there, it's truly heartbreaking, especially because there is such a large financial cost that may or may not be covered by people's insurance. And so I'm surprised the county hasn't put an injunction in place when they went inside the buffer zone and were creating some of these issues.
Well, I mean, I think you might have heard what Nicole said on CJ's show, Jenny. She actually said, in some of these conversations that were supposed to be off the record, the county doesn't want to correct it or admit liability now is what the problem is they don't want to do any, they really feel they can't do anything because it admits liability if they do.
Well, that's right. And really the practice is anytime somebody either brings up an attorney or says legally maybe there's recourse, you immediately stop conversations. That's why I try and coach people to be very careful about how they interact with, elected officials and those representatives from the government, because a lot of times, that stops progress and that could drag something out for years. And at that point, you're already out of the money. Your house is ruined. And I know especially Phil Norton's wife is in a situation that's pretty serious. And I knew him personally, and he served Rockdale County for 37 years. And it's pretty heartbreaking to know that all that hard work and his widow is not able to find, a clear pathway on how to resolve it. And so that's heartbreaking, especially. So but yes, that was a horrible experience. And I think, I know on my page alone, I've had over 17,000 views on that video.
Yeah, mine too. It's gone up.
Yeah.
You talking about Nicole's thing?
Yes, with the chairman.
I've seen different feeds of that, and they all have thousands of views.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting, and it's I think it's telling. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this late in the game, that does not help. It does not help the that incumbent, and there's already an anti-incumbent movement within the county And then when you've got the incumbents doing that, and then also another thing they're trying to do at the last hour too, Janice, you've seen it too, is this flurry of all of the incumbents trying to pretend they've not raised taxes. And that goes to Mandy, Sherry, and to Oz. All of them spouting this falseism that they don't raise taxes. And that's every one of them.
I actually don't know that I've heard Oz say he hasn't raised taxes. All I've heard him say when they asked for 2 ways to cut the budget, he said to educate people in the community is what I heard. And I thought, wow. So there was no viable option given for how to cut the budget. And I think that really lends itself to the disrespect to the taxpayers. Like, I mean, he has full access to more staff than we've ever had in the history of Rockdale County. Yeah. And he's got a director for this, that, and everything else. And I just can't believe that there's not a better way to say, hey, we're cutting the budget in these manners, and meeting with the department heads to figure out a way to make that happen. And I've said before, when we were dealing with a recession in Rockdale County, and it was, of course, across the nation, those were dire times, and we had to really look carefully to see how we prioritize what our job was as government. And at that time, it didn't include all these activities and events and things like that. And so we had to pare down and make sure public safety was top priority. And then any other necessary government items. I think then we also had to choose to close the library 1 day a week. But you know what? We were all in it together. So we worked in a conscious fashion to make sure that the residents were taken care of, and that we fully explained what was going on and what the goals were. And people in Rockdale were actually really, really great about it and understood.
Well, I'm going to give y'all 3 minutes each to tell why y'all the best candidate for your position. And since Tuesday is election day, it starts at, I believe, 7 a.m.? Is it 7 a.m., y'all?
7 a.m.
Yes,
to 7 p.m.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
On election day. And if you don't know your polling place, you can scan that code there, and it'll take you to the place to let you know where your polling place is. And Larry, let's begin with you.
Yes, begin with me. So why should you elect Larry Cox? You should elect Larry Cox to the Board of Education because we need to make some drastic changes on how we look at education in Rockdale County. And how do we do that? The first thing we need to do is take a real look. Does this superintendent need to continue in the position of superintendent? In Larry Cox's opinion, the answer is no. And when you look at what the opinion of the board was when they approved his contract a few months ago, it was a 4-3 vote and 3 people opposed. And from my understanding with that, if you would ask those 3 individuals now, if there was a revote, they would vote no today. So just do this. You take those 3 people, you put Larry Cox on that board in January, and we would be removing that superintendent and begin a search for a superintendent who would be able to work with the board in first identifying that there are problems with the educational system and finding solutions to those problems. That's the one thing, because as long as we are in denial that we have issues, we're never going to address them, because we're not going to admit that we have them. Then when we look at our budgeting, the budgeting has to be done differently. The budgeting needs to be done from the schoolhouse up. We need to budget from teachers, parapros. We need to budget from the schoolhouse up to the central office. And that's how we will also cut the budget. We will I would recommend zero-based budgeting, because one of the board members told me that they've looked at like 3 past budgets, and a lot of the budget they could tell is copy and pasted, because it's the exact same line items that are in there that are just copied and pasted from the last 2 previous budgets. So that means they're not doing their due diligence, going back in there and reviewing actually costs. They're just copying and pasting and then adding percent. I've worked at big corporations and they've done that many a time. This is your budget for next year. We added 10%. That's what the budget is. So we've got to really look deep at the budget. Then we've got to look at school security. We've got to look at discipline in the classrooms. What do we need to do about discipline in the classroom? We need to restore discipline so teachers can teach. I've talked to teachers and they told me it's difficult for them to conduct their classes because they can't control the students. And when they take them and send them to the administration, nothing's done. They get the exact same results. One of the board members have even mentioned to me that his school's class is disruptive at least once a week when you have a disruptive student and they're not able to actually conduct class and everyone's sent to the hall until they can get that student under control. We have to restore discipline in those classes so that teachers can teach. CJ, that's some of the things we can do. Replace the superintendent, restore discipline, and budgeting. There's a lot more things I want to do with the community involvement, community meetings, visiting the schools myself to make sure that the policies and the curriculum that the board is passing is being followed. Now, not go to the schools to interfere or interject, but to go and observe, which is in the full capacity and the ability of a school board member. I asked for open records requests, and those open records requests identified that, yes, school board members are allowed to do that. So where they come up with this nonsense, they can't visit schools, can't have public meetings. You know, if that comes from the GSBA, then they need to be schooled in what the law is. That's my 3 minutes, and now you can give it to Janice.
All right, Janice, let's hear your 3 minutes. And then, yeah, he said during that video that he's the greatest advocate for the this person thinks he's almighty. So give us your 3 minutes and why you're the best choice for Rockdale County.
Well, I want Rockdale County voters to know that my experience working in Washington, D.C. at the federal level with legislation is very important. Working at the state level as their state senator for Rockdale, Newton, and DeKalb, and then at the local level as a two-term commissioner for 8 years. Those things are really important because many of the concerns that people have are legislatively related. So for instance, when we're looking at planning and zoning issues, which is probably one of the top two topics, the overbuilding, the fact that we have a planning and zoning map that is submitted every year, but yet it's not followed. It is so unbelievable to me that there is no plan whatsoever that's being followed. And I think it's only going to continue to render Rockdale looking the way it does right now. We need beautification. When we talk about committees not being active, remember the Clean and Beautiful campaign? I haven't even heard a thing about it in years. And so I think that committee as well has been very quiet and not active. I don't know if they need appointed members, but we also have concerns with the Water and Sewer Authority not being active among the homeowners and civic association. They meet, but my understanding is that they're at everything is run by the county, and it's really not an opportunity for the homeowners and civic associations to be engaged and kind of lead the format as to what they would like to see in the community changed and improved among, whether it's the zoning issues that's putting stress on infrastructure or just county operations. So definitely making sure those committees will be appointed and active is important. And let's not forget the ethics committee that had all the legislative piece planned, approved, and appointed, and then it has not been used in years. Additionally, I will work to make sure that we look at the budget. We'll start the year off with a forensic audit, and that will give us a baseline to work with. I'll meet with directors and the department heads, and we will formulate what the real needs are in the county and how we can achieve the goal but work more efficiently. And so if there's any opportunities for technology to intervene and help us, if there's also opportunities for us to reduce the needs of the community staff, of the department staff wise, we will look and assess that. My goal really going in is to put a hiring freeze in place for all non-essential employees. So that would not touch law enforcement needs or first responders like in the fire department. But we have just continued to have a bloated government that has layer upon layer of unnecessary staff members that we could do without, in my opinion, based on what I have looked at. But I will not be reducing jobs when I go in. We'll be assessing and looking at what the needs are of the community. And then the other big thing is just ongoing beautification in the community. And that's really going to take a collaborative effort with our property owners in the county. That's everybody from the owners of the shopping centers to any of the businesses in the community. It's going to take a real effort to get those things going. Right now, we've increased code enforcement, but I don't see any notifications to business owners about the exciting opportunities to work in a collaborative effort to improve our community. We've also dropped what used to be a program that they would recognize businesses of the month who really did a great job aesthetically and were good partners in the community. And so even restoring something like that would be a help towards getting closer to our goal. And these concerns are the very concerns I hear across the county, different socioeconomic levels, people of different races and backgrounds. They all see what we see, which is a lack of true beauty in our community and a lack of planning.
Yeah, and also on the show with Nicole, she was talking about, she saw that we had an ethics board, but there's nobody there. So again, when you do the ethics board, and there was something else she mentioned, but I guess just holding everybody accountable, and like if we don't go to 5 commissioners and stay 3 commissioners, have like representatives for the people to get in contact with the right person that we need. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think with this election, if the voters make what I perceive to be the right choices, it could be a whole new ballgame where people do feel like they have accessibility and where they do feel like they're heard and they can see the benefits of the work that we'll be doing in a collaborative spirit among all 3 of the commissioners. So they may actually find out 3 can work if you pick the right 3 people.
And that that's the problem with that. It's got to be the right 3 people, and you can't never guarantee there's going to be that right 3. So the 5 is a safety net, Janice.
Yeah. I wish it was working for Newton, that safety net, because they have ongoing dysfunction all the time with their 5 and fighting about different things. But at the end of the day, I'm all about the opportunity for people to vote the way that they want to see their community. And so I would definitely support putting it on a ballot and letting the voters decide what that would look like. And I do feel a little bit better about our delegation in the General Assembly, and that they might actually be able to get something passed this time and stay focused on Rockdale County and what our needs are. So
and on the show too, within 90 days, I'll bring y'all back. I know y'all be busy with the school and chairmanship once y'all are in, but I would like to bring y'all back on the show and give an update as things are going on. And how would y'all feel about that?
Oh yeah, that would be great.
Well, you got to remember, when we're successful Tuesday, we don't take office till January, CJ.
True. So 90 days after January.
Yes, but the good thing will be that for me, I would have a greater level of access to information, and I think that given that, we would be able to go ahead and appoint to the Citizens Oversight Financial Oversight Committee, and then my intent is to also appoint the Business Recruitment and Planning and Zoning Committee. That would be one committee. And so for those 2 committees, I am looking for people that are experts in their field in the business, financial, and government funding arena. We have a lot of talent throughout Rockdale, so I'm looking for volunteers with that type of experience for the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee. And they will also look at best practices for procurement, how to make sure that we engage people from a diversity standpoint and a quality standpoint for contracts and things like that. And I know that we do have some policies in place, but it never hurts to look around at other communities that are leading the way and make sure that we're adopting those best principles. And then for the business recruitment, that people that have been in the business world at different levels of, small, medium, and larger size corporations corporations, those type of people with that experience, the ones that are so interested in making sure that we have better restaurants and, retail experiences, people with that kind of background would also be very helpful.
All right. I got a couple questions in the chat. Who does the BOC answer to? If anybody
The board
knows
of
that.
the Board of Commissioners really answers to the citizens in the community, and that is, the Ethics Committee was supposed to be a measure that allowed for any concerns to be submitted to the Board of Ethics, and then they would hand out decisions, penalties, fines, any of those things. But as it sits right now, only the citizens, really only the voters, get to decide the penalty for not listening and the penalty for disrespect, not managing a budget, not properly carrying out the goals of the community, and improperly planning and zoning issues. I looked at information today that showed where it was denied by the Planning Commission on multiple occasions, yet the Board of Commissioners approved it or approved the conditions. And so I think I mentioned before that one of my goals is to make sure that the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners has excellent training to ensure our future success and really focus on that planning and zoning map and sticking to it. And I think we'll see an enhanced response with the way things are handled in Rockdale. Now, let me clarify that I am not trying to block people from business aspirations in Rockdale at all. In fact, I want to strengthen the businesses we have here and bring more people on board that can really grow their business. But right now, I think that if we can make anything streamlined in the business office, we should surely do that and have quick response so that people can get their licenses quicker. I do know that even someone down at in the Honey Creek area, he is opening a new store, and it is like a ice cream icy place. It's called Pelicans. He has waited a very, very long time to get his business license, and that held up progress for him. So fortunately, I just found out that he has been able to proceed and get his license. So that's pretty exciting. But when you're a small business owner and your opening is delayed 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, that is very expensive for people that are shelling out a lot of money to get their doors open.
You give me his information, I'll get him on the show so we can get him popularity here in Rockdale County.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
So I asked this question to Denise about transitioning, but I want to ask more like, do you think you'll have problems with the party itself when you come into office, when you have problems with them instead of the chairman itself? How do you feel about that?
You mean from the Democratic Party? What problems would I expect?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, the beauty in America is that voters have rights. And the Democratic Party champions that. And so I think that the people's will should be done this Tuesday, and that the Democratic Party, just like any other party and group, should listen to what the taxpayers and the citizens want. So I feel prepared to work with everyone in Rockdale, and that includes the Democratic Party, Republican Party, independents. It really, I've never had that as a central question when I've worked with residents to find solutions. So I will reach across the table to anybody that is willing to work together for the betterment of Rockdale County.
And Larry, find any problem working with the transition team when you get in office?
Say what?
The transition team, do you think you have any problems when you get in office?
No, I don't think there's going to be any problem. And we won't have a transition team because the board is already established, and it's just one board member coming on. There are required training that I have to take, 15 hours of continued educational training that you're required to take as a board member before coming on. So I will take the required training before I come on. I will do more. I will ask more questions than probably anybody who has ever came on that board before. I will be visiting the central office. I will be gathering data. I will be gathering information. I will come into that office on day one. I will guarantee you more prepared than any person who has ever entered that board before.
And this question is to both of y'all. What would you do if not elected?
I'll answer that.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm a positive thinker, so I like to think with that
Right.
in mind.
We all are.
But I mean, I will continue to do what I've done all these years, which is problem solve for people. I mean, I'm still helping people get all kinds of documents and, you know, driver's licenses, people with issues like that, connecting them with resources that are, you know, meaningful to them and help them, you know, be able to get jobs and provide for themselves. But there's so many great state organizations that can help resolve issues that are so important in people's lives. So I will, of course, continue to do that. I will stay active with Peachtree Academy. I'll also be active with Rockdale Emergency Relief, which is an organization I'm very passionate about. And we are able to help people not only with food security, but rent and utility assistance as well. And so it's a great organization, and Sandra Jackson-Lett does a fabulous job as our executive director at Rockdale Emergency Relief. But there's other committees, United Way, a variety of other things that I do in the community. And of course, one of my favorite things, just being a mom and wife and loving, you know, being able to be around my family. So.
All right, Larry, what do you do?
Well, CJ, I'm still going to do this even when I'm elected, but you know that I've got this little show called This Week from Rockdale,
yes,
you know, and a lot of people watch it.
Mm-hmm.
People who like me watch it, and people who don't like me watch it. So I will continue doing that show. If I'm elected, I'm going to have to modify some of the things I talk about. I will not be able to talk about as much Board of Education stuff as I have in the past. But let's just say I would not get elected. I would continue my advocacy through my This Week from Rockdale. I am also, whether elected or not, I am working on a draft of some legislation that Miss Angela Moore, Representative Moore, has agreed to carry as far as a senior exemption for Rockdale County students. And one might remember when the last addition to the exemption was passed, it was an additional $15,000. That came from a petition that the Rockdale voters started that modified into that. I've spoken to Ken Holmes, the other founder of the Rockdale Voter. He and I are, after the election, we are actually going to modify that legislation, add some income test things to it, and we are going to send that to Miss Moore. And we expect to be working on that senior tax exemption for Rockdale County citizens this coming legislative session. And that's whether I'm elected or not. Just because I'm elected to the school board doesn't mean I have to quit being a citizen.
Right.
And I won't be, because a very wise member who's not on the school board gave me some advice. Not on the school board anymore, but he said, Larry, you'll always have to remember this. Are you acting in your official capacity as a school board member? So when I'm working on legislative issues, I will not be working in my official capacity as a school board member. I'll be working in my official capacity as Larry Cox, citizen of Rockdale County. So I will continue my citizen advocacy, which I've worked very hard on here in the last few years to help advocate for citizens' tax rights and just their rights in general. I've also told Chairman-elect Ms. Van Ness that when she is elected, if I don't make the cut, I would be willing to serve on any board that she deemed necessary for me to serve the community also, CJ. So I'm going to be there serving the community like I always have, offering solutions, offering resolution. And I am going to keep a very close eye on this school board and make sure everybody who's supposed to live in this county stays in this county.
There you go. Well, I appreciate y'all coming on the show. And again, voting day is this Tuesday. It starts at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Again, if you don't know your voting place, you can scan that code right there, and it will take you straight to the place where you need to go to find out where you vote. Again, I appreciate each one of y'all. Yes, ma'am.
CJ, is it possible before we end to watch
Mhm.
that little fire station video that I posted?
I think I did have that up. Let me, I can get that up for you right quick. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You have any thoughts on that before I
Is
pull it
that the
up?
grand opening of a station that's not open?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So I'll describe it as you look for it. But I was on the way back with my daughter, and she was driving last night, and it was just dusk, so I could see all the lights on. And I was always raised you turn the lights off when you leave a room. Well, they were all on last night, and I was like, turn around, let's go back. And I couldn't believe it because I, of course, expected you have a grand opening, you have fire trucks in there, that maybe you also would have some staff or maybe not a dumpster in the parking lot. So anyway, let's watch it. Hi, this is Janice Van Asher, candidate for chairman of Rockdale County. On my way home from a wedding, I stopped by fire station number 10 because I know they had an open house on Monday, June 10th. And I was shocked to see that we had an open house with inflatables and food and games, and yet this is our fire station. You probably can see there's no fire trucks, there's no staff, and there's nothing but supplies to finish the job. Just makes me wonder why in the world we bother having a grand opening and spending money on any extras when we don't have a staffed fire station and we're understaffed at other stations in Rockdale. Please vote Van Ness. Get out on Tuesday, June 18th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And let's stop the shenanigans and get down to business in Rockdale.
All right.
CJ, before we go, I got one last word.
Yes.
Just look at your tax bill. It doesn't lie.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Did you want to add anything to that, Denise?
I think that people are getting more informed, and the valuations when they came out, people were shocked. And I think sometimes you can lose touch with citizens until situations like that come up and you understand that Grandma Sue is simply looking at what she paid last year. And let's say her tax bill was $1,100. And this year she's expected to come up with $2,400. It's just unacceptable. And so what's happened is I spoke to a woman yesterday, and she's got a small business in the mini mall right off Old Salem. And she was telling me that her Part B is being taken away for her and her husband. And apparently this is an issue affecting a lot of citizens. So that Part B is now going to be deducted from their Social Security checks. So it's $170 difference per person because it affects her and her husband. They're both disabled. So you can imagine how, like, they're panicked. What in the world are they going to do trying to come up with the $340 they're now responsible for Medicare Part B? But now they're supposed to come up with a tax bill that is just staggering. And, we had a tax sale in June. I think there's another one scheduled in July. But as somebody posted, that could be you. That could be a real person having to have their house on the tax sale list. And so we need to be conscientious. And that's the way I've always operated, and that I've looked at the budget, is I take that responsibility very seriously. And I ask a lot of questions because I want to make sure that what we're doing with their tax dollars is beneficial. Years ago, when we started SPLOST, many, many years ago, I was an advocate for putting the penny sign up so people could visibly see this road was just paved with your 1 penny at the register, because that helps people understand how they're getting the credit for host, how they're getting the SPLOST dollars that pay for projects. And, for this new courthouse, about 19-20 million of it is through SPLOST. It's going to be funding, it's supposed to fund the rehabilitation of the current courthouse and make it compliant with ADA regulations and improve safety. That's what it's supposed to do. then the other 110 million is going to be through the PFA authority, which 3 people were appointed to, and in a 2-to-1 vote, they did approve the request. Go ahead, Larry.
5 people.
On the PFA?
Yes.
I only saw Dawn, Darlene, and Tanae.
There are 5 people.
Who are the other 2?
The district attorney had an appointee.
I thought that was Tanae.
Yeah, but there were 5 members of the PFA.
Okay, at the meeting I saw 3. So it was
Only 3
Darlene,
came.
Don Murphy, and Tanae. But
remember the judge that was appointed, that was the chair, the former judge, former Superior Court judge that was the chairman of the PFA.
No.
Yeah, and then there was another lady. There's actually 5 members of the PFA.
All right. Well, we'll have to research and figure out who those 2 other members are. But needless to say, that incredible tax burden is going to be on the backs of everyone in Rockdale County, and on top of our school board, millage and the valuations and all that. I just am very concerned about what that looks like for people in Rockdale. And look, at the end of the day, nobody needs the stress of the what if. Mm-hmm. What does that look like in a short amount of time, coming up with all the extra money? So I encourage people to get out there and vote on Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Vote like your house depends on it. Mm-hmm. And if you rent, vote like your rent depends on it, because it does. It really matters, and it's going to hit your pocket soon enough. So is George Diaz?
Darlene Hutchins is on there too.
Hotchkiss. Yes.
Yeah, she's on there also.
That's one of the 3 I said. So Tanae, Darlene Hotchkiss, and Don Murphy.
And that former judge was on there, and then I forget the lady that was over on the left, because when I went to the original meetings, Tanae was over on the right. There was that lady there. Darlene sat beside the judge, and Dawn sat beside there, and then there was that other. There's 5 members, because the chair was the former. The chair was the former judge.
Okay. So, but people have got to pay attention. I know people are busy working on Tuesday, trying to make it all work in their own lives. But I hope that they will trust in the fact that I will work hard for them. I will listen, and I will be respectful. I've been on the county commission before, so I know about operationally what it should look like. And of course, I've been out for about 10 years from the county commission, but I certainly remember what used to happen, and will be glad to work with the staff that's there and make Rockdale even better.
Awesome.
If you give me a second here, I'm looking it up. I'm going to tell you who's on the board.
All right. And then, so get out and vote again. It's going to be at your local voting place, not West Avenue. So make sure you go
Judge Todd.
It's Alicia Sanders, Donald Murphy, Darlene Hoskins, William Todd, and Tanae Davis.
There you go.
Alicia Sanders, is that who you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Larry, for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Yes. So I appreciate y'all coming on, taking out y'all's busy schedule. And again, go vote Tuesday at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
All right.
Anybody that's on here, come back at 8 o'clock on This Week from Rockdale. I'll be doing a solo show tonight where I'll be leaving nothing will be left on the table tonight. We're gonna.
I'm sure you get questions.